All right, so we've stubbed out the player. Let's stub out the user list. That's another simple component. So jumping back over here, let's open up our Solution Explorer, and I'm going to create another folder in here. Actually, before we do that, I do want to stub out one more file with the player.js, and that is our styles. I'm going to write a player.scss, just an empty Sass file, and I'm going to go back up to player.js, and at the top, I'm going to say import player.scss. So that'll make it so our styles are imported. And we can verify that our styles are being imported by me doing something silly like h1 color red important and hit Control S. And now, because of HMR, all of our headers are red. So let's remove that. We know that's working. Okay, so in components, let's go ahead and create a new folder called users. And in users, I'll create a new file called users.js, and we'll do users SCSS as well. And for users, I'm pretty much going to do the exact same thing I did with player. I could copy and paste, but I'm going to write it all out for you guys. So, actually, let's go ahead and just do them side by side, so you guys can see the similarities. All right, we'll import jQuery, import money from jQuery. Well, actually, I will copy and paste that line. I don't want to type that out again. And then we'll import users.scss, our style sheet. And then we'll do class users component extends element component. We are going to do something different in the constructor. The users component is actually going to be very trivial. So I'm just going to create the users component as a UL element. So when this gets mounted or this gets attached, it'll be a UL element. And then I'm going to say this element add class users, so that we can attach on ul.users to get our users list. On attached, I'll do the same thing. Const title equals this mount. Remember the mount, this mount find h1. Remember the mount is the section. So like for the users, it's going to be this section class users. That's the mount node. So to get the h1, we simply have to query into the h1. Anyway, then we'll say title text is users. We'll do something more interesting with that later. We'll have actually show the user count. So let component try component equals new users component. Component attach section.users. And then we will catch on E, console error E, if component detach. And then finally, if module hot accept, module hot dispose, component and component detach. And that's our users. Very straightforward. Let's test our HMR. Come over here and refresh, because now it is a hot module. And now we can change the text. Oh, we didn't, looks like we didn't mount. Oh, that probably is because I didn't include the users in the application. Why do I always forget to do that? Let's jump down to application.js, and we're going to say require components users. Again, I'm using the require syntax here, not the import syntax here, because you can't import that far down in the file. So now that we've imported it, we should be able to refresh. And did I save it? Component attach, section users, title text, h1 this mount. Oh, it's underscore on attach. My bad. And then users does that. And then, of course, if we change this text, it does indeed get hot reloaded. All right, so that's our users. Let's do our chat next. Our chat's going to be a little bit more interesting. So our chat is going to have two subcomponents, a list and a form. So let's go ahead and jump over here, and let's create our chat component. So coming into the components, we'll create a new folder called chat. We'll create a new file under that called chat.js. And you know what? I am going to copy and paste this time. I'm going to copy users and dump it into chat, but I'm going to do something a little different here. Let's first change the names. I'm going to call this chat component, and change the mount node. We're mounting onto section.chat. Next up, on our onAttach, change the title to blank. I want the chat to have no title. And then, of course, for the add class, we're not doing that because we're actually not going to inherit from element component. We're going to inherit from component base. And then, so as a result, we no longer need to do that UL because component base's constructor has no parameters. So now if we come over here, after, of course, we include chat inside of our application. So in our application, include chat, and be sure to do that. And I will jump over to chat. Once I fix this, I will, whoops. We need to import our chat.scss, and we need to actually create chat.scss. So make sure you do that. And then we'll refresh. I'll make sure it's working. It's not quite. Let's see here. Section class chat h1. Section chat. I imported it wrong. That's what I get for going so fast. Components chat. Components chat. Cannot resolve file or directory. Chat.scss. Because I called it CSS. Again, that's what I get for going so quickly. Now we refresh, and now chat is working, and we can verify HMR is working by adding in some garbage there. Okay, sweet. Let's talk about the chat component for a moment. I know I jumped through that really quickly. So all I've done so far is I created the chat.js and the chat.scss, and I've required in the chat.js from application.js. Then I copy and pasted the code and changed the names. But I also made this not inherit from element component. The reason why is chat has two subcomponents that are actually going to be elements, our chat list and our chat form. So let's go ahead and create those subcomponents first, and then I'll show you guys how we'll tie them into this component. Now, the thing about our subcomponents is they're not a root level component, so as a result, they don't need HMR code. The hot module replacement will bubble up. So let's say chat depends on chat list, right? And then I change chat list. Well, HMR is going to say, well, chat list doesn't have the HMR code, so let's bubble up to the next guy above you and see if he has the HMR code, in which case it will, and it'll result in the chat component being completely recreated. So let's right-click chat and create a new file called list.js, and we will go ahead and grab the component base, and then we're going to say export class chat list component, which will be an element component. So we don't want to import component base, we want to import element component. Extends element component. And his constructor is going to invoke super with UL. And then he's going to say this element add class chat messages. And on his onAttach, we don't need to do anything. We'll be filling out this component later. So next up, I'm going to grab this top line. I'm going to right-click chat, create a new file, and I'm going to call it form.js. Paste in that line and say export class chat form component. Extends element component. Chat form is going to have a constructor, and he's going to simply do super div, which is actually unnecessary because the default is div, but whatever. And then I'm going to say this element add class chat form. All right. So that's our chat form component, if you want to take a look at it. And here's our chat list component. They're literally the same. Though when we fill them out, the functionality's not going to be the same. But again, I'm stubbing this out so we have a nice little roadmap of things to do. Now let's import these components. So I'm going to go into chat.js, and how about after we import the Sass, I'm going to say import chat list component from /list. / is important. Then import chat form component from /list. Then on my onAttach, I'm going to say const list equals new chat list component, list attach this mount, this children push list. And then const form, I'll explain this in a second, chat form component, form attach this mount, this children push form. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, first of all, if we inspected this, we will see chat We won't quite see them being attached yet, though. Unfortunately. So let's investigate. Investigating is always good. Okay, so chat form component extends element component. List.attach, form.attach, both on our mount node. Oh, you know what? It's because there's an error. I should really be paying attention to the console, but it's so hard to pay attention to the console at the same time when the screen resolution is so small. I imported chat form component from list. You guys probably caught that. All right. Seems that worked. And live reload did add chat messages and chat form, just like we wanted. Now watch this. Let's say on my chat form component, on attach, I did something silly like let's say, I don't know. Let's say this input equals input type equals text, class equals chat input, and then we append to this element. Now watch what happens when I hit Control S. Well, we get an error because jQuery is not defined. Let's import money from jQuery. Now it happens. Now watch what happens when I hit Control S. We now have a form element. So the hot module reloading bubbles up. So by changing the chat form component, it is changing the chat component, which is then being completely reloaded into the DOM. And that is our chat. Okay, this one's going to be a lot less fun. Another reason why I'm doing it like this, I'm stubbing this all out, because doing repetitive code like this leaves a lot of room for errors, and I want to iron out all those potential errors first, so I minimize the amount of times I embarrass myself in the series. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the playlist. So as you can see, the playlist is made up of a bunch of subcomponents, because the playlist is actually the most complicated component of this series, and we're going to have quite a few videos on the playlist. So we're going to create the master playlist with the hot reloading. Then we're going to create our Chrome, our toolbar, our context menu, our items, and our sort, and then we're going to tie them all together. So let's go have some fun, I guess. All right. I'm going to start off by jumping up into my chat.js, and I'm going to copy all of this, because the playlist component is more similar to the chat component because it has multiple subcomponents in it. And then I'm going to right-click components, create a new folder called playlist. And then inside of playlist, you guessed it, I'm doing playlist.js. And before I forget, playlist.scss. And then before I forget even more, I'm going to go into application.js. And I'm going to require components playlist. And then I'll hit Control S. That won't cause a hot reloading because I don't accept on application. So in our playlist, I'm going to paste in all that code I got from chat. I'm going to delete all this. By the way, I promised an explanation about how I did that, why I did this children push. And I might as well put it in now. I'll delete it from here, but I will jump over into our chat again. And remember, in chat.js, when we created the subcomponent, we attached it to our mount node, but then we had added it to our children. Why did we do that? Well, we did that. Think about it for a second. We did that because in our component base, our children array, when we detach, we'll detach all of our children as well, which will give the opportunity for our child components to do any sort of cleaning up, like, for example, unsubscribing from an observable. Okay, jumping back into the playlist, we'll nuke these two top lines. We'll change our SCSS import to playlist.scss. We'll change our name to playlist component. We'll change our name to playlist component. We'll change our attach to section.playlist. And we'll leave everything else as it is. Or maybe just change the title to playlist. Let's make sure that works first. So we've done all that. You can take a look at the code here. It's pretty much all the code I wrote so far for this component, other than in application.js and our empty Sass file. Let's jump back into Chrome and refresh. And playlist did mount. Let's see if it hot reloads. Playlist does hot reload. Everything is awesome. All right, let's just go top to bottom and stub these guys out. We have our toolbar, our context menu, our items, and our sort. Items, context menu, and toolbar will be element components, but sort's an interesting component. It doesn't actually have a really visual representation to it. It just hooks into the items component. So it's not going to be an element component. All right, let's jump over here and let's get started. I'm going to, well, wait a sec. Toolbar, context menu, items, sort. That's the order we're going in. Toolbar.js. Because I'm lazy, I'm going to jump into chat form and I'm going to pull that code there. I'm going to paste it there. Toolbar is simply going to be a div. So we're going to export class playlist toolbar component extends element component constructor super div, and then this element add class, and we'll call this toolbar. All right, I'm going to copy this whole line, and next up we're going to create our context menu, and that'll be a div as well. So right-click playlist, create context menu.js, and paste this in. Change the name to playlist context menu component, and change the class to context-menu. Next up, list. So we're going to right-click playlist, and then add a list.js. And this is, of course, where all of the list items are going to go. Paste this in. We're going to change this to playlist list component. We're going to change the type to a UL, and we're going to change the class to playlist list. And finally, we need our sort component. So I'm going to right-click playlist, go to sort.js, paste this in, but there's a couple changes we need to make. First of all, we're not importing element component, we're importing component base. And then we're going to call this playlist sort component, and we're going to change the super to just invoking super, and then we're simply going to remove that entirely. Now, I do want to point out that a lot of these components are going to take constructor parameters, but we'll fill out the constructor parameters as we need them. Again, I just want the skeleton project. Okay, now that we have the playlist sort component, that's actually a subcomponent to list. See how items is here? Underneath that is sort. So let's go into our playlist component and let's bring in sort. So I'm going to import playlist sort component from /sort, and then underscore on attach. Remember, underscore on attach. I'm going to say const sort equals new playlist sort component, and then I'm going to say sort attach this mount. Now I'm attaching to the mount and not the element, because the playlist sort component is going to be one level up. It's not going to attach to the UL itself, it's going to attach to the thing above it. What's the thing above it? We'll see in a second. Next up, remember to add it to your children. So this children push sort, so that when the playlist list component gets disposed, so does the sort component. All right, now we can do playlist. So the way I'm going to do playlist is, first of all, we're going to import all of our stuff. Playlist list component from list. We're going to import playlist toolbar component from toolbar. We're going to implement playlist context menu component from context menu. And I managed to forget about Chrome. So we also need our playlist Chrome component. And the Chrome component is also going to be a component base. It's not going to be an element component. The Chrome is just there to manage things like the title and the scroll bar indicator. So I'm going to right-click playlist, new file, chrome.js, and I'm going to paste a copy from sort, because it's very similar. So I'm going to take all of sort, and I'm going to come up to Chrome, and I'm going to paste it in, and we're going to call this playlist Chrome component. And then we're going to jump back into playlist, and we're going to import playlist Chrome component from Chrome. And so those are our components. In the next video, we are going to go ahead and add these all to the playlist and then wrap up all of our element stubs. So we'll see you guys then.